I feel like my argument in the first part of our social media conversation got lost in the how secure they were treating everything with TikTok and all that. Yeah. And really, it's the problem is how much data they're collecting, not necessarily the amount of encryption. Yes, I would like anyone who's collecting data have, Fort Knox level security that's impenetrable. That'd be great, but not collecting as much data that TikTok is collecting overall.
Right.
Yeah, and if they are going to collect it,
yes,
to be transparent about it.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't think we touched social media too much. I think we just took our right turn into security and data collection.
Yeah. We kind of I think we tangented onto current events, but then we didn't we came asymptotically close to it.
So I think we really touched on the security aspect of social media, but we definitely didn't touch on any of the social aspect of how interacting primarily through social media affects the human psyche, and how that differs from what people would argue are more genuine ways of communicating, face to face.
What's genuine mean?
Yeah, we could spend some time trying to define what genuine, how face to face, long format conversation is genuine meaning all the things that need to be, I don't know, what would you consider to be genuine communication?
Well, maybe we don't focus on the word genuine, and we just agree that there are perks of interacting face to face as opposed to over the internet. I think we're bad at interacting over the internet currently. I think this form of communication is a pretty monumental event, on the scale of learning how to do written language. And so now we're being able to transfer that, not only just language, but ideas and art and everything through space, right? We're sending all this information, and we're just bad at it because it's relatively new on the scale of things. So what's happened is the pioneer industries that were right to just abuse the internet have jumped in really quickly, and over time over the scale of the human population, we will adapt and begin to refine in how we would prefer the internet to go. But it's going to be a bumpy ride, and that's what I think we're experiencing now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I do think the increased accessibility to communication is by far one of the best things that has happened for human beings. But there is something to be said in the format in which that we are communicating and how it's differed from what we're used to.
Yeah.
I think for people who, I think it's more of a problem for individuals who forget that they are a person, and that the people that they're speaking to online are a person. I mean, and is a person. Excuse me. But that's not to discount, you have trolls and stuff and people who just don't give a shit because they hide behind their veil of anonymity, and they can say whatever they want with absolutely no repercussion. And I don't know if that's ever going to go away in this sort of environment. It's a thing that you can do easily. You just be mean.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to communicate is that there is something lost in Facebook posts and in Twitter posts and in Instagram posts.
Sure, I think this is where we need to do certain types of social media are different because Discord is a social media
for sure,
but you have voice chat, and I'd say voice chat is one thing that takes that communication to another level. It's a little more personal when I can talk to you.
I will never forget what it felt like the first time I got on Xbox Live, threw my headset on, and heard other people playing the game. It was one of the most visceral, immersive feelings ever of participating in something that was just awesome, Yeah.
Yeah, it was immediately you were in a community of other people who were essentially cussing or saying everything you were too about the game.
It's just the participation of being there with other human beings was great. But I think the argument is that there are certain formats of social media that are, I don't know, I don't know what I would say what they are to people, but there's definitely something negative about it.
What are the outcomes that you're seeing that you dislike? And then maybe we can trace it back.
Yeah, I think what it is, I think people hold each other to the past to a fault. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're on that side. Okay, yeah.
I feel as if people bring out a tweet that you made, 10 years ago. It really doesn't allow for people to grow as people. And the other thing is it's so much easier to sit and, what Vicktor was saying, and remove the human aspect and just type these statements at people as if you're just typing at a screen. It's so much easier to type at a screen than it is to look at someone in their face and tell them the same words,
Okay. Can I comment on that real fast?
No.
Okay. Okay, so my question is I think what's happening there is that the person is communicating in a way where they can they lack the anxiety caused by having the outcomes of they're less worried about what the other person is thinking.
There's no social pressure.
Exactly. And that's I think that is the troll aspect. But another problem that you were describing is if you find yourself in the limelight. I don't think bringing back old tweets is affecting a large majority of the population, but if you're in the limelight, then yeah, there's kind of a bank of just your previous thoughts they can throw at you.
And what you were describing over that's called cancel culture, or at least that's what the internet calls it, where people go through just all your past shit, find that one time you slipped up, and bring it back and try to bring you down.
Yeah, and so is the solution to bring that pressure from the people that are in the limelight to everyone, so trolling is highly consequential. I think nobody would really want that, but we kind of exist in this weird balance where one side is just on tiptoe eggshells, and just the bottom of people not in the focus can just say the craziest shit.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be understood that people grow and people learn, and there are certain aspects of people's life that, or how you grew up or how you were raised, that maybe you didn't understand things were, if we're talking about prejudices, you didn't understand that things were this way, or you didn't understand that this flag was actually a terrible flag. You just didn't understand that because that was how you grew up. Now if you're 40, 50, you've had some worldly experience, maybe there's less excuse for that. However, people grow. If you're still 40 or 50 and you hold to those old beliefs that people have been called out and said, hey, this is bad and you shouldn't, these sorts of thoughts are not good, they're not constructive towards progressing society at all, they hold us back, then maybe that person needs to be confronted and said, hey, there needs to be a serious discussion, because you're a person who has a platform, who has power, who has people listening to you and doing what you say, essentially, and you hold these beliefs that are not good. We need to bring those people up. But if it's you slipped up 10 years ago, you said the N-word 10 years ago, and we can have an entire debate on words, or on the word in and of itself, but maybe you come to understand that's I shouldn't have done that. That was bad.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought. You just gave me a great thought.
Okay, yeah. But so yeah, you say you said the word, and it's you've come to realize over the years, I was wrong then, and I understand that, and it shouldn't be held against me like that now and tried to bring me down, because then that invalidates all the work and learning I've done to try to get to the betterment of myself that I am at now.
Totally undermines that growth. But the thought that I had was that you had triggered was, it's almost Yeah, the conflation of someone who is like right now actively like promoting like detrimental ideas to society to someone who said something similar or in the same vein negligently or ignorantly in the past. It's almost as if and let's say it's someone who has like some sort of heading and some sort of power. It's almost as if they're accused of, well, this is what you've thought all along. And the people who have been following you, this is what they really think too. You know, it's like this accusation of, oh, you said this once and this is what you stand for. And you've really secretly stood for this all along. You've just gotten good at hiding it. That seems to be like the initial accusation. It's not like, oh, you know, it was just a young, dumb person, you know, doing what young, dumb people do, you know, say stupid things. It's like an accusation of much more malicious intent. Like, everyone's a mastermind. Everyone's like a closeted secret racist and closeted secret bigot in some sort of fashion, and they have to delete their tweets in the past just to hide it. Not because they're embarrassed or because they think differently now. No, just because they've gotten better at hiding it, you see.
Yeah, they've moved on from regular chess to 3D chess now with their racism.
Yeah.
They're trying to be one step ahead and be racist in the future. It's like, what?
And the problem is that it's difficult to kind of like course correct that behavior, because stopping the access of people's previous publications is like an impossible task.
Yeah.
Like, you could take a tweet down, but like there's screenshots. Like, it's over. Like, it's not coming back in the box.
And there's the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. And so like it's more of a challenge on our behavior with like it's like a personal behavior challenge, and those are really hard, like difficult to course correct.
Oh yeah.
Like at a population scale.
Oh yeah, no, people are doing that on their own. It's a cognitive dissonance is what it is. Some people, when they see something, they take this route of thinking as opposed to another route of thinking immediately, and they prefer that route of thinking over the other one. That's why you have, like, you know, what's going on right now in the world. You know, there's some people who are like rationaling everything as as either a conspiracy or everything is just fine, or the exact opposite, everything's fucking horrible, you know. Or you're taking the rationale of prepare for the worst, you know, and hope for the best. You know, those are two different routes of thinking, you know. You can either prepare for the worst and hope for the best, or you can ration whatever pre-designated conclusion you have and ration towards that.
Yeah, and you kind of playing off your, because you gave like the two kind of extreme sides, and I think what a lot of, if I could speak to the sides in a personified way directly, I would say something along the lines of, you know, what you need to understand is human society and history and everything has always sprung back. Regardless of how bad it's always seemed, we've always come back together as people. We've rebuilt cities, we've advanced society, and we've advanced technology, always. That will happen, because it always has, unless we, as people, completely destroy ourselves. So it's not necessarily appropriate to be on one side of either everything's falling apart or the Illuminati are real and they're secret organizations and everyone's being super secret masterminds plotting against everyone else with everyone else. It's more of we're all clueless, but people spring back, society springs back. We always come back.
I'm not going to pretend like I could even know what preparing for the worst actually is. And in doing so, like, pretending that I would know the best way would just be like a silly way to like use my time. And I'm just gonna let it play out and just not believe everything's all right, but not declaring I know where the line is being drawn on manipulation.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say like be be complete, fuck it, just go through it and everything will be fine. Like, no, do pay attention to history and what's going on in the warning signs. And I will agree that things are not great right now. However, I'm not like, not going to be one of those, the society's falling apart. No, it always comes back. It always does.
It's terrible, but it's the best it's ever been.
But just to kind of bring it back to what we were initially talking about, the cognitive dissonance that exists in social media is either to assume that this person is becoming more and more conniving, and hiding what their true intentions are and their ulterior motives versus true, genuine growth.
You're describing the receptor or the person doing the exposing of old ideas to someone.
I'm talking about the person reading comments in old tweets. That's the perspective. Okay. You can either take two routes of thinking.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're using cognitive dissonance right though.
What do you mean?
So my idea of cognitive dissonance is that you should do one thing, but you actually do another, and there's a tension in your brain caused by that, and that's cognitive dissonance. That's how I interpret it. But it sounds like you're thinking of just holding a bias, having a bias of a certain pathway of thinking over another.
No, I was just thinking of divergent ways of thinking on initial some stimuli. You can either go one or two different ways. So
I just Google food it. I pulled a Jamie.
Hit us, Jamie.
And so cognitive dissonance, it's almost a mix between the two of you. The state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. So not necessarily having, like you were saying, Obed, with you're reading stuff and then you immediately diverge to one of two extreme sides. It's more of you're constantly I think abortion should be illegal and weed should be legal, and we should criminalize the people who have had drug charges in the past. They should stay in prison, and having that sort of belief system that doesn't add up actually.
Something having contradictive, having internal contradictions.
Yes. It's when you hear someone talk and they say two different things that they believe in, but those two things contrast each other. You're like, wait, how can you be for both of those things then?
Yeah.
How can you be for freedom of everybody and you want the borders of America closed? Okay. You don't want anyone else in.
Divergent thinking, Obed, I think was exactly I think that's a really good phrase for what you're describing. Divergent thinking.
Yeah.
It's a hard turn, when a certain stimuli happens, you take a hard turn in one way of thinking. And there's other turns to make here. Sorry, got tripped up there.
It's not like I'm trying to define a term or anything. I'm just I'm grasping.
It was just confusing me. It was getting me lost in what you were trying to say.
I'm just using words that I know to kind of grasp at this idea that I'm trying to convey.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
But yeah, I think you can either go two ways. Is basically the generalization that I'm trying to make. But I also think there's an effect on people, when people start to genuinely believe that this is how people think.
Yeah, but I would argue against a dilemma anytime. Well, almost any time, though. And what you've presented is a dilemma, only having two options.
Huh? Oh, I mean, I'm not saying it's only those two things. I'm just saying that, those are the two generalized things that I see. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, people can interpret things in an infinite amount of ways.
I think it's because they lack the context a lot of the times. And so we have an expectation to receive information quickly because of how the internet slapped us in the face. And our current attention span is pretty poor. So we gather information and we kind of wrap it up and put a conclusion on it very quickly. And we lack the context. And so when they lack the context, that's what causes them to make that turn, because they don't have the full collection of what that person is to start to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And it's up to the person who's reading anything to do the due diligence to figure out anything if they want to pass judgment on someone. But the thing is, people don't do that. They read an article about how one person read this, and then they just take it as truth, as gospel, and then they, lynch them on the internet.
A comparison my philosophy professor actually made, it was great. Essentially, this has happened before. We've been here in human history before. With a lot of information going around, a lot of people putting out a lot of information, regardless if it's true or false, and people believing just everything. This was called the Enlightenment, or the period just after the Enlightenment, when there was so much information, so much new works of art, just so much stuff was flooding the world that people just started believing everything, or some people started believing nothing.
Exactly.
And,
that's where I am.
And so that's where we are again as humans, or in human history, with the internet. The internet has essentially, the floodgates are open. It's easier than ever to put anything on there, and it's easier than ever to listen and find anything to find your community on the internet. We need to get better as people in learning what is good information and what is the crazy person on the corner of the internet.
But that takes time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think humanity, we've been generally agreeable. But I think we've seen an influx of people who are hyper agreeable. And I think what's important in development as a person is discernment, and being able to discriminate from good ideas to bad ideas. And if you're too agreeable, it makes it difficult to weed out poor ideas and bad ideas, because you're more willing to consider shitty thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's just you're more, or at least from what I'm getting from that, is you're more willing to accept the ideas and beliefs that you may have already had, or even if it's shitty ones.
Yeah, so like someone who's extremely conscientious and someone who's extremely agreeable is more likely to adopt poor ideas or to be indoctrinated. Mm-hmm. Just because they're...
I don't know, I still want to argue against this.
Huh?
I want to argue against this.
I mean, that's fine.
What about people who join, I'm going to go with just white supremacy groups because they don't have a social group that they attach to?
Well, I mean, that's the same thing.
I wouldn't say those people are very agreeing. If anything, they're very closed off. They're just very agreeing to that one subsect that is also very closed off.
Oh yeah. It's agreeable to the point of success, and like they've already succeeded. They've already found their in groups, and part of the conditions of that is to discriminate against others. They're so agreeable to the point that they're agreeing to be shitty to other people. Does that make sense?
No, because it almost sounds like you're saying they're so one way, like they're so accepting of people that they're actually shitty to. They've come back all the way around. But I don't think I would say those.
Oh no, it's nothing to do with accepting of people. It's accepting of ideas.
That's the thing. I don't think people who join closed off groups like that are accepting of ideas. That's the problem. That's why they join that group, is because that group actively rejects all other ideas, and they keep them in their small little subset bubble.
No,
it's not that they're agreeing to ideas. They just happen to agree. They just happen to have one single idea that this group latches onto.
So, if you were to draw a timeline of a person who joins a cult, right? Mm-hmm. So, I would say they are very agreeable from the very beginning, right? And in hopes to gain some sort of into some sort of social group, to be in some sort of in-group, right? So, in an effort to do that, because they're so agreeable, they are willing to overlook these reprehensible morals and ideas in order to gain favor of a person. That's what the agreeability is about. It's like, you know what, here, I'll adopt this idea, this format of being to be accepted in the group. And part of that is maintaining this new adopted structure. And so, like,
But
that's why
some people already had that. They didn't have to adopt any of those ideas. They already had those ideas, and the group just said, "Hey, we're a group that has those ideas too. Come on in. We got jackets."
no. I mean, no. Racism is a learned behavior. It's not something people are born with.
Right. No, but what I'm not just saying racism either. And some people can come to racist ideas just in their own natural lives, like just based on where they grow up. It's you have a problem with this racial group because it's a group of bullies actually, and they're just friends and they pick on you because you're different skin color. Then a dude walks up and says, "Hey, we're a group that also hates those people too."
Well, I mean, that's still a learned behavior. That's just the circumstances that you just made.
Okay, I think you guys are describing average agreeableness, and I think that I would like kind of define agreeableness to something like caving under social pressures. And I think different people, I think it's not just a yes or no, is someone agreeable? I think it's in which ways are they more agreeable? I think there's a spectrum on several different axes on different like variables that cause someone to like cave to social pressures. And then pulling us a little into, I would also I like to consider agreeableness is also like the ability to step into someone else's reality tunnel and kind of see the world through the ideas concreted like into someone else. If you get stuck there, that's not a good thing, and you could find yourself into some pretty shitty reality tunnels. But I think ultimately the truth of everything is subjective, and being agreeable allows you to like see into other people's tunnels.
I'm not arguing against
easier.
The truth is subjective. The truth is the truth, just kind of in a defined sense.
I would agree with you, but I would also say that it's unknowable. Like the absolute truth is unknowable.
Individual truth is subjective for sure.
Yeah.
Like my reality could be different from your reality, but my reality is truth to me.
Yes, but it's your the truth. Whatever is truth to you is not absolute truth. Ooh, are we diving in this hole? This is a hole.
Kind of. I think to define truth is just what is to me. As I define it, truth is what is.
What is, yeah, and I would say we don't have the ability to absorb what is in its entirety.
I think that discounts science.
I mean, science is our attempt to get a larger slice of the pie, but like it's almost an infinite pie to grab. And so like there's a lot of things going around us that like an event, if an event happens, like the circumstances of the event in like the fuller context could include a lot of things that we're not considering.
So, but before we go too far on truth, can you explain to me real quickly how you were relating truth to what exactly we were just talking about? Hold on.
It was kind of a side. So it's a hard turn. So we were talking about agreeableness, and I had a comment that said that you're able to like witness other people's personal, I think, truths. Mm. I think I just kind of slipped the word in there, and then Vicktor and I have jumped in. We jumped in. This could go on for hours.
Oh yeah. So that was the thing. That like the willingness to take the shoes of the other perspective, is what makes someone more and more agreeable. And then
yeah, that's
like,
what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I mean if I were to guess, Vicktor would alter your statement to use the word perspective instead of truth,
Basically, yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, I use the word truth kind of ironically in my like other perception that truth is like unattainable. So, yeah, perspective is the better word for the audience.
But relating back to agreeability and the adoption of poor, reprehensible morals is, I think, what leads us into the understanding of like some of the most like atrocious things that have happened on the planet, like understanding how an entire population was willing to commit genocide against another, that sort of level. And it all comes to the adoption of shitty ideas and the inability to discern other better ideas, and then perhaps coupled with an environment that punishes those who do,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you have shitty ideas, you do need to reinforce that other ideas are bad. If you're a group that's trying to enforce the shitty ideas, like communism.
Oh, yeah, exactly. If you're the one who's peddling the bad ideas, you can't allow for critical thinking. You can't allow for debate. There's no place in it if you're just wanting to peddle bad ideas.
The problem is that everyone has their own compass on what is a good idea and what is a bad idea.
Exactly. And so what I'm saying is that my claim is the more agreeable you are, and if you're perhaps hyper agreeable, the more likely it is for you to adopt some extremely morally reprehensible ideals and to do some horrible things so to maintain one's status in the in-group.
Do you think obtaining the status is the motivator?
Just like being in the in-group, surviving, is the ultimate motivator, that the primal motivator that is present, I would say.
Yeah, people want to be accepted. You want to be a part of a group, part of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what that is the shitty thing. And because I think sanity is this very, very subjective thing, that sanity is whatever the people at the time determine it to be. And because of that, agreeability can take especially an isolated population or extremely pressured population can take that and decide on their own accord what this new bubble of sanity is.
What's sanity?
Exactly. It's I would say it's the the unconscious consensus.
The unconscious consensus?
Yeah.
I like that.
Of what?
Of what is acceptable, and what we deem to be okay.
But that's very much culture related. That's very related to the surrounding community.
I feel like that's just an aspect, though, because you could have a person who's sane who's just lived up in the mountains away from people.
Who determines if someone's sane? Is it the person themselves, or is it the people around them?
I would call sanity the ability to function and live within your world. It's just like being sane would be the ability to function and live within your world, as in you can feed yourself, you can get money if you need it, you can get water if you need it, you can get shelter if you need it, you can take care of your bathroom needs when you need it.
Okay, but now something, you were fine until the other day, and some crazy rabid dog bit your leg, and you had to get it amputated, right? And you can no longer do any of those things, but you're sane, right?
Well, yeah, but you're still that would be implying that people who are amputated have no ability to take care of themselves.
Maybe not.
They do. They can function in their world.
When you guys think of someone who's lost their sanity, what comes to mind? Basically, for me, it's losing one of those faculties. You either lose the ability to take care of yourself, you're smearing poop on the walls, you're eating the poop, or you haven't eaten in 3 days, not due to like work stress or other mental deficiencies, but because you believe you've eaten, or you're wandering the street naked, things like that. So like some sort of, for me, it would be some sort of break in one of those abilities to function and live in a society, or in your world, in your wherever the hell you live. So, Victor, going back to your question about some people being up in the mountains, there are secluded, isolated populations, but they're populations of people. They help each other maintain sanity. You see.
Now it sounds like they help maintain each other, or they help each other maintain a society, not just sanity.
Well,
I feel like that's implying sanity exists outside of a person.
exactly, that's what I'm trying to say. I think sanity exists outside of a person. I think that task, the task of maintaining sanity is too complex of a task for one individual to do on their own. And it is a requirement to have other people. Like, that's why people who are in like isolation and like solitary confinement, like, they literally go crazy.
Yeah, but
because
those people also don't have access to other stimuli that they might like, such as books, nature, rocks, other things like that. Maybe they like to wood carve. They don't have access to that in solitary, so that could be a reason why they go crazy. Not just they don't have access to people.
Yeah, I'm not saying that every person that goes and lives up in the cabin of the woods gets cabin fever. I'm just saying that cabin fever is a thing, that is a phenomenon that exists.
No, that's fair. I would argue that sanity is within the individual.
Yes, correct. But like, in order for it to be a thing that exists, it takes years and years of construction to be developed and to be sound enough for an individual to go out into the woods and live by themselves. You have to be a person of character to be able to go out and do that, and it takes experience in being out with people to do that. It's not something that someone can do 100% alone by themselves.
Nobody can build a society. I think, or to metaphor hard, or to make an analogy, if you were to drop me in I get to live for 300 years, and you drop me in a forest or on a random planet, and I have to make a computer, I couldn't do it in 300 years. I would need people. I couldn't taste every single thing there and find out, even if I didn't die of things that were poisonous, I couldn't find everything and eat it and find out what is poisonous, what's not poisonous, what needs to be prepared in a certain way to make it not poisonous, or if you prepare this in a certain way, it will kill you. I couldn't do that in 300 years. I need people to do that. Yeah. Yeah,
but I would say 10 years of complete isolation is enough.
What does that prevent you from doing? Like, you said that you think that's enough to make you insane?
I think it prevents...
And so what are they not able to do that they would be able to do in society? Because maybe that'll get us our definition.
Differentiate sound ideas from not sound ideas.
Oh, so it's just the ability. So you're describing sanity as the ability to construct logic.
Correct. Like, the ability to... Imagine if, like, we would never, ever talk to each other. Imagine, like, if we were to maintain the mentality of a 13-year-old and no one ever told you any better, and you just continued thinking that way. And if you just stewed in that mentality for 10 years, you would be a really, really, really warped version of that, because you have no one to tell you, no, that's actually wrong, and maybe you should abandon that thought. That's how, like, this is sort of how, like, conspiracy theories sort of kind of go up, because people, like, speak unedited and what's the word I'm looking for? Unchallenged, for long amounts of time, and they just continue down long, like, trains of thought, and they just never are challenged, and because of that, they come to these crazy conclusions, and they keep those conclusions to come to more new conclusions, and that just keeps going and going and going until you believe there are little people living in your brain, or something odd,
There could be little people living in your brain. What do you mean?
But I wouldn't call that insane, because there's civilizations that have that have lived in their little tiny isolated groups with no contact to people, who have to me, I would look at them and go, wow, that the way you do society seems all back asswards, and some people might even call other people like that savages.
It's a different culture.
But they've been living. That's how they're able to function in their world, even if their world makes no sense.
I wouldn't call those people insane, though. like that's not that doesn't I don't feel like that fits my definition of insanity. Like they have each other to balance off or to bounce off and challenge.
Sanity is culture related, as you're saying. Like if someone it's the inability to operate within your culture. Is that what you're saying?
I think the more people who are involved in the maintenance of each other's sanity, the better. And I think that I don't know. I don't really know if there's like an end cap to that.
Yeah.
Or you said it came outside the body, Obed. So that makes me think that like it's the disconnect. If someone has a disconnect with the like interacting with somebody else, that person's considered insane, and that's because that the receiver of the interaction doesn't understand any of the signals being provided.
Well, it's the disconnect and the isolation of one individual from any population. Like if you take a population and separate it from a larger population, I don't doubt that there'll be cultural differences, but I don't think they're going to be insane. I wouldn't define it as that.
Let's try to think about it this way. And this look, I think, tries to bring it all in makes it culture independent, right? So I would say it's the lack of the ability to use previous information gathered by your brain when making considerations with new information coming in. And so that creates a disconnect on it, like takes away your understanding of societal, just the norms of society, right? Because those aren't like bound in you. So I would say that condition causes.
I agree that that's true, but I think it's due to isolation and a reformation of the conscience.
Well, not always, but I think that definitely can trigger it.
So I have ways of thinking, right? And I talk to you guys, and I share my thoughts with you. And based on, the way you guys respond to me and whatnot, I alter different aspects, and that model changes. And when I'm away from you guys, I make alterations to that model all on my own as well. And because I'm not arrogant, I share those thoughts with you guys because I trust that through your observation, it'll make my new alteration to my model of thinking more clearer or better, you see. But if, let's say, I'm off on my own and I make an alteration to my model of thinking, and then I don't have anyone to bounce that off, and I just decide to go forward, and just march on my own, and under the presumption that the new alteration to my model of thinking is sound. And then I do that again, and then I do that again, and then again. And then the bridge that I started was good in the beginning, but as it goes further and further out, the planks are, of less and less quality and fewer and farther in between is the picture I'm trying to draw. Right.
Fair.
Does that make sense? That's
but again, I would argue against if you were still able, going back to how I define sanity, being able to function in your world, even if let's say you've gone down a twisted, convoluted thought path, over years and years and years, going with your bridge metaphor, you're building different bridges of lesser and less quality, but if you're still able to function in your world, you're still able to get food, water, shelter, I would still classify that as sane. Even if I think the thoughts that you were thinking are probably insane, you're still able to function in your world. You're still sane. You're just crazy. You just have a fucking crazy thought.
Oh, exactly. That's why I called it some sort of consensus is what I defined earlier, because like okay, here's a shitty example, but have you guys seen the movie Predators?
No.
Okay, it's the Predators, with where they all get dropped on the island and they're all being hunted by multiple predators. You know what I'm talking about, Vicktor?
Yeah.
I can imagine.
and then they find Lawrence Fishburne, who has been stuck on that island, on that planet, excuse me, for however long he is, and he's like gone insane, and he's like talking to like himself and stuff, but he's completely functional. Like he's still like not being killed by the predators on the game planet. He's surviving, but like that dude is insane.
But see, I wouldn't necessarily call him insane. He's still able to function and live. His mental state might have deteriorated to a degree that, from our sanity point, it seems insane, but he's still living and functional. I wouldn't call that. I would still classify that as sanity, just on the very low end of it.
That's like the hallmark of a crazy person, though, Vicktor. Like, crazy people don't know they're crazy, right? Because they're long.
Well, are we talking crazy people or are we talking insane people? Because you're right, crazy people don't know they're crazy, but insane people don't function in a society at all.
Oh, I'm under the impression that those words are kind of like interchangeable.
I see. For me, they're separate definitions. You have crazy people being an umbrella term for a broad variety of mental disorders, whereas insane I would classify as a disconnect with reality somehow.
Okay. So
wait, insane is disconnect from reality?
Yeah, some sort of, again, the disconnect being that you're no longer able to function in your world.
Okay, so the declaration of if someone is insane can't be claimed until outcomes have been witnessed?
Essentially.
Right. Okay, so
otherwise anyone can be insane for
you can't. Something has to happen first.
Let me throw some things at your definition. And so like I want to bring us back to the idea that what if I was dropped in the Predator Island, right? I'm coming from a very cultured environment. I have very few skills in just being dropped on an island and surviving. At what point do I become insane? If the outcome is I die because I can't survive in my new world.
See, and I would say if you willingly chose to go there, then you're
insane. No, I didn't. I was brought there.
Yeah, so then you're not insane for going there.
But once I'm there,
whenever you stop, if you weren't being hunted, if your life didn't end prematurely and you lost the ability to try to take care of yourself. Not saying, if you went out hunting and you tried getting food and after 3 or 4 days you couldn't find any food, couldn't get any food, you died of starvation, you didn't go insane. But if you, after 2 days, you just lost the will and completely stopped looking for food altogether, then you've gone insane, or an aspect of insanity has entered into you, or you've become whatever.
So just it's the motivation to survive is important.
Yeah. Because survival is that like basic. It's not even human. It's animal instinct of find food, find shelter.
I don't know if like survivability, like how competent you are, has any. It's not really the conversation that I guess I want to have. Like, yes, there is a. Okay, so there are potentially multiple ways of having models of thinking that lead to successful survival, right? All right. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to not be in the same mode of model of that happens to be of functional survival that I'm in, I guess I would call that person insane, right?
And I would call that that's a more personal look at it or aspect of it. Like that's within you. That's within you, not necessarily within.
What I'm trying to say is that there's something that is altered and lost one of those two words when a person is put into isolation.
I guess that's what kind of isolation. Because if you're in an isolation where you can't do anything, I can kind of see it where you'd go insane. That almost makes sense. But if you're on a deserted island all by yourself, insanity can happen, but it's not guaranteed.
Is insane a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective?
Insanity is it's a noun, I would imagine. Yeah.
Or okay, so here's an example. Was fucking what's his face in Castaway? Was he insane? I would say no. He desperately wanted. He was desperately lonely, and so that twisted his mental thinking into Wilson. But I wouldn't call him insane because he managed to survive, build a raft, and get the fuck off.
Well, what I would say is that is a slippery slope down the loss of sanity, and that was.
Yes, he got very close.
But, like, that's back to that metaphor. He was in the midst of building outwards, of, like, in his new models of thinking for outwards, And part of that was this conversation with the ball. Even though he wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, irreparably or unretrievably lost, doesn't mean that his sanity wasn't compromised.
Sure, but I would still call him sane.
Oh yeah, so would I. But like, that's what
he just got right up to the edge of insanity, and managed to come back. Or he was already out in the ocean.
I guess
at
what
that time,
what I'm arguing is that process existed still, even there. Like it was taking place, even though he wasn't consumed by it.
But I would just call that, for me, I think I would call that an aspect of just that's how he survived. For him, it was a survival method technique.
Oh, you mean yeah.
Now, if he had continued talking to Wilson to a point where Wilson was telling him, "Oh no, you've already eaten. You don't need to leave the island." Stuff like, then he's gone insane. Yeah, he got very, very close with treating Wilson as a physical being, but he still managed to function and get off the island. So yeah, he got really, really close, and his psyche got damaged, and his thoughts got a little twisted. But I don't think he lost sanity.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't really like thinking about it as like outcome orientated, but I would say that sanity. So I think that humans are there's a ratio. There's like an average ratio of how logically sound our thoughts are and how logically sound they aren't. Humans are not 100% logically sound, but I would say there's a norm ratio that exists there. And I would say someone who's insane is, I guess you could draw a line where the ratio of logical thoughts and illogical thoughts goes too far to one end. Fair. And I think cultural relative insanity would be, think of another ratio like that, but also consider the understanding the context of the society around you. And that can make you look insane to cultures, but then I think there's a standalone how logically sane are you as well. What do you think about that?
I think at that point we're just using the word insane because we don't have another word to describe what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So I think we've been dancing around a couple different definitions. It's been all interesting to poke around at. Or we're all crazy. That could be the case too.